Hello everyone. Razorblade Mango here. So I'm gonna be trying out a new type of video. I don't know if I'll ever do this again, but this is something that I wanted to do because over the last few years, and I guess during this entire channel's history, there are just certain games that I play throughout the years that I never really talk about in any big way on the channel. They don't get their own dedicated videos or anything like that. There are probably quite a few games I've played throughout the years that I've never mentioned once on this channel in one way or another. But with this year, I think the thing that sparked this idea was that when I was doing one of my live streams, I think a few weeks ago, I got a question from one of the people in the chat who asked when am I going to be doing a Death Stranding 2 video. And I thought, yeah, I would like to do one. It's just, And then the more I thought about it, the more I went, am I really going to re-download Death Stranding 2 to get footage and maybe play through it again in order to get like a full-on review or anything like that? And if I'm being honest with myself and with my audience, the answer probably is no, despite it being the latest Hideo Kojima game and it's a big PlayStation release. But the truth of the matter with Death Stranding 2 was that a lot of things I could say about it, I could also say about the first game. And I felt like with a big full video, I'd be repeating myself a lot and I just wouldn't have a lot of more unique things to say about Death Stranding 2 compared to Death Stranding 1. But then I thought more about it and I figured, that's kind of been the case with a lot of games that I'm sure some people in my audience would like to hear my opinion on, where I just don't really have a great deal to talk about with a certain game. And then I thought, rather than just spamming out a bunch of 5-minute videos about certain games, why don't I just sit down and do an unscripted kind of talk about the games that I've played so far this year that have not gotten their own videos. Because there are going to be certain games that are omitted from this video, like Expedition 33 and South of Midnight and Split Fiction, that have gotten their own videos. But I'm exclusively going to be talking about the games in not in like super duper depth, but just the things that I have to say about it that I don't think are worthy of their own separate videos about it. How much I have to say about a game is going to vary depending on the game and how I feel about it. Some of these entries could be a mere couple minutes. The others could go on for 15-20 minutes. I have no idea how long this is going to be. This is something I've never done before. This is just literally me sitting in front of my mic and just shooting the shit with you all. It's a fine morning, so I'm going to treat this pretty casually. So consider this a solo podcast of sorts, where I'm just going to sit back. I actually have coffee right over here. This is my second cup of coffee as I'm recording this. I'm drinking out of my PS1 Astrobot mug that I have, so ooh, fancy. So treat this as a casual solo podcast. So I have a handful of games that I'm going to talk about, but let me see. I think I had 13. So let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 13 games, because these are games that I either have completed or I am close to completing, and I feel like I have a solid grasp on what I want to say about them. And then I'm going to be omitting games that I played a little bit of and then gave up on for one reason or another, such as To a T, which I tried playing on stream and I just kind of went, okay. After that hour or so I played of it, I was just kind of done. I thought like I saw what I saw what I thought I was all gonna get from this game. And then I tried playing Atom Fall earlier this year. I got maybe a couple hours into that and just went, fuck this, and quit and deleted it because I just was not having a good time. And then I also tried playing Avowed from Obsidian, which That's another one I got maybe a couple hours into, and I just kind of went, I just wasn't really feeling it, which is a shame because it's Obsidian and I usually really like them, but for one reason or another, I just wasn't really clicking with Avowed, and it was just at a time where I thought, I could really just be playing something else, something that's much more enjoyable than this. So I deleted it and then moved on from there. But I'm going to be talking about 13 games. These are going to be a mix of big budget. A lot of people know what these games are. And then also I have some smaller titles on here that I would recommend just to put some nice variety in there. I'm very proud of this list where I have a nice variety of game sizes and genres and niches and things like that. So I am ready to go. So let's start with, besides the first game and the last game, I did the rest of the 11 games. I put them into a randomizer and just kind of went, all right, randomize. And it just gave me the chapters based on like how I'm gonna structure this. So number 1, so let's start with Donkey Kong Bonanza, aka the reason I bought a Switch 2 day 1. It wasn't for Mario Kart World. If they had just announced Mario Kart World and Kirby, Air Riders, and Hyrule Warriors, I would have thought, cool, I'm not gonna get this day 1. But then they showed off Donkey Kong Bonanza at the end of that April Direct, and I thought, shit. Because it's a 3D platformer from one of Nintendo's S-tier teams. I mean, yeah, the reason you buy a Nintendo console these days is for the first-party software. You don't buy it for the third-party stuff. You buy it for Donkey Kong. You buy it for 3D Mario. You buy it for Zelda. That's the reason you buy it. As far as the game goes that I bought a whole console for, I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it, which I was disappointed that I didn't love it, because even to this day, I still adore Super Mario Odyssey, which for my money might be maybe my favorite Nintendo game ever made, possibly. It's definitely up there with like Majora's Mask and Galaxy and Tears of the Kingdom for me as far as the elite Nintendo games for me. I think the biggest problem that I have with Bonanza is that compared to Mario Odyssey, it has a more limited variety of the kinds of things that you can do. I know there are the powers in Bonanza that let you solve puzzles, and even it has a very Mario Odyssey philosophy where it kind of or even the latest Zelda games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, that basically tell the player, if you can figure out a creative way to break the physics or the puzzle that we're trying to put in front of you, we'll allow you to break it because we're gonna reward your creativity. And that spirit is there in Donkey Kong Bonanza. So that's where you can definitely feel the Mario Odyssey influence in Bonanza. Unlike Odyssey, where I feel like it is just constantly throwing new things at you, new gameplay ideas, things like that, Bonanza is much more limited, and I think the level design suffers a little bit because of it, because you kind of have your all of the levels share the same tool set, and then they share the same powers that you can get, the Bonanza powers throughout the game. It doesn't quite have that variety of powers and level design that I was hoping for compared to Odyssey, where Odyssey, mechanically, something like Lost Kingdom, New Donk City, the Snow Kingdom, all of those feel very different because of how the levels are designed around the powers that are exclusively available in those levels. They're the gimmicks. And there's nothing really like that in Donkey Kong. In Bonanza, it's all about destruction, which the fact that the destruction works as well as it's advertised is, in my opinion, a miracle of programming and optimization and design. I think the destruction mechanic in this game is as good. It's actually better than how it's advertised, which is fucking incredible to me. But I think that unfortunately starts to kind of, when the thrill of the destruction kind of starts to lessen after a few hours, I kind of thought to myself, okay, what are they going to do next? And there really is no next, in my opinion. There's just, what are some iterations of this dig mechanic, this destruction mechanic that we can do, which is fine, but it just didn't provide the thrilling, multifaceted gameplay experience, the constant variety that I got out of Odyssey. And I think another problem with this game is that until the very end, which the very end I think is very satisfying as far as an actual challenge, a lot of this game is insultingly easy, especially the boss fights. These, what are they called in Odyssey? The Brutals? If you thought the Brutals, those rabbit creatures that would throw the hats at you, the ones that Bowser always had around, if you thought those guys were too easy, just wait until you meet the bosses from Bananza, because I swear to God, there were certain bosses that I must have beaten in less than 15 seconds, because I just, either the enemy health bar is way too low or Donkey Kong's powers are just way too high. But there were just some parts that that ended as quickly as they began. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, guys, I'm not in kindergarten. I can handle a more challenging boss fight. And then Nintendo just kind of went, no, you're probably a child. So we'll make this boss fight stupidly easy. And that way you can get back to the destruction. And I kind of thought, that's lame. that's lame. But then what's so weird is that then at the ending, I mean, the final boss fight isn't crazy challenging by any standards, but it almost caught me off guard, because it feels like the final boss fight is just a baseline of difficulty of what I expected from all the Bananza. Because some of those Donkey Kong games, especially the country games, those can be pretty damn challenging. But then you get to Bananza, and it's almost like they way overcorrected in the opposite direction, where they went, people probably thought Tropical Freeze was too hard, so let's make it a lot easier compared to that. And then they just went on the complete opposite end of the spectrum and made it too easy. Until you get to the final boss, which then more feels like something approaching a challenge, even though I didn't really struggle on that boss fight all that much. I think I died once just because I wasn't fully paying attention to what I had to do at one phase, which I think I was amazed that I could actually even die on that final boss. I went, wow, I died. That's something new for Bananza. Another problem with this game, I feel like the more bland levels get front loaded. And then by the time you get to the second half, that's when it starts delivering the more creative, wacky ideas. Because the first portion of levels are kind of just, here's ground. Here's a different colored kind of ground. Here's more ground that has some poison in it. And here's ground that's just snow. And I went, oh, okay. These don't really feel all that different. They just have a different color of paint on them and a different texture. Not at all the kind of variety that I was hoping for, given that quite a bit of this team worked on Odyssey, but it's very good. If there's any reason to buy a Switch 2 right now, this would be the reason, but I don't... Mario Odyssey, I'll be honest, I felt like if Mario Odyssey was the only game that came out when the Switch first came out, I feel like that would be enough to justify buying a Switch. That game to me is a system seller. Bananza, not so much. It's really good. It's very enjoyable. And by the end of the game, I went, wow, that was a really fun time. But not the system seller, in my opinion, that I feel like it had the potential to be. So next, let's talk about Sword of the Sea, which I think is the most recent game or one of the more recent games on this list at the time of recording this. So Sword of the Sea is the latest game from Giant Squid, who are led by Matt Nava, who was the art director at that game company for a long time. He was the art director for Journey, one of my all-time favorite games. And their previous games include Abzu, the diving exploration game, and The Pathless. Both games I like. And, you know, Giant Squid, what frustrates me about Giant Squid, and my reaction to the games they make, is that Giant Squid's games are the kinds of things that I advocate for all the time. They are short games. They are way more focused on art direction than on raw graphical detail. They're single player. To me, I like their games, but they're games that I always feel like I should love, but I don't. And it never really dawned on me until I played Sword of the Sea what my big problem with Giant Squid is. And that's the fact that I think they are just stuck at one speed as far as the kinds of games that they make. It feels like all three of the games that they've made, Abzu, The Pathless, and now Sword of the Sea, all three of them feel like they are chasing the shadow of Journey. Where Journey, to me, one of my all-time favorite games, it's this very unique kind of meditative, art-driven kind of game. And the thing with Journey is that it had mechanics in it, and it was very brief, and it had a lot of variety in its environments, and it had the multiplayer component that gave its themes of humanity and cooperation a lot more heft to it than solo games like Abzu and The Pathless and Sword of the Sea. But every time Giant Squid releases a game, they all feel like they're trying to say, hey, do you remember how cool Journey was? Didn't you like Journey? Here's another game that's just like Journey. And I kind of just sit there as a player with this, not sour, but this blank look on my face going, yeah, I played Journey. I played Journey, what is it, 13 years ago now? I've played Journey. It's one of my all-time favorite games. And you ain't Journey. So, this is one time, Sword of the Sea, where I felt like they had an opportunity, especially with this kind of more skateboarding mechanic, or snowboarding, or whatever you want to compare it to, the surfing mechanic, where they could have added a lot more meat to this game. But the surfing mechanic feels like that's the most disappointing aspect because of how just shallow it is. And it's not really about navigating tricky platforming or anything like that. It just feels like a very it's not until the end with, again, it's a boss fight where that's where you kind of have to more worry about getting out of the way and not taking damage and dying and stuff like that. But the rest of it just kind of feels like the game is just screaming at you, look at how pretty our game is. Isn't this beautiful? Doesn't this shot make you go ooh and ah? It's this very, what's the line from Family Guy when Peter is drowning and he goes, I didn't like The Godfather, and everyone around him goes, why? And he goes, it insists upon itself, Lois. And I feel like while that may be a joke coming out of Peter Griffin's mouth, I kept thinking about that when I was playing Sword of the Sea. I just kept thinking this game insists upon itself, where it just has this very almost self-masturbatory, self-congratulatory vibe to it that I just don't really click with anymore. I compare it to something like What Remains of Edith Finch, for example, where that's an indie game that has a lot of visual flourishes and moments that are meant to convey this sense of awe, but there's way more meat as far as thematic depth and writing and character work in that game. And I feel like What Remains of Edith Finch actually deserves that I guess you could call it pompousness that it might have. I feel like it earns that because it actually puts in the work of not just going, isn't this pretty? Isn't this emotional? You hear this beautiful Austin Wintory music with the violins and the singing, and oh, don't you just feel, you feel things? And I just sit there playing Sword of the Sea, looking at them trying to rip off one of the most iconic shots from Journey, like the 4th fucking time in the game. And I kind of just sit there and go, no, I don't feel emotional. I don't feel feelings. I just feel dead inside as I play this, which is, it sounds like I'm being harsh on Sword of the Sea, there is enjoyment to be derived out of Sword of the Sea. When Sword of the Sea is at its best, when it's at its best is when it actually gives you an inspired moment that has to do with the motion of surfing and things like that. That's the stuff where it's really good. But when it just does its thing of glide through bubbles to open up pathways and have dolphins shooting out. Once I encountered the first couple of awe-inspiring shots that this game has, the rest of them just kind of go, I've done this before. You know, there are moments in Journey that are awe-inspiring, but they don't bombard you with emotion and over-the-top Austin Wintory music and visual flourish the whole 2-hour time during Journey. A lot of Journey is very low-key. And then when it gets to the grandiose stuff, it feels a lot more earned because there's this musicality to building up to this crescendo. There's really nothing like that in Sword of the Sea. It all just feels like it's at one speed, where it's just this constant bombardment of pretty visuals and whimsical music and shit like that, to the point where I just went, you know, when I talked about Expedition 33, I said there are certain games that make me feel like, man, maybe video game has just passed me by. And there are certain games that I feel where I just feel nothing when I should be feeling something. And this is one of those games where if you probably hooked up a device to my brain to kind of sense the brain activity while I was playing Sword of the Sea, you probably wouldn't find a whole lot of activity, because it just is kind of, it's like, okay, it's Sword of the Sea. Like, yeah, okay. And I feel bad because from what Giant Squid have said, they almost closed while making this game, and PlayStation basically came in and saved it. And I feel like I should be more appreciative of this game, the fact that it exists at all, but I just, in the moment while I was playing it, I just kind of thought to myself, man, these games really just are not, these Giant Squid games just really are not for me, because they just feel like they're chasing Journey's flavor. And I played Journey 13 years ago, and I love Journey. If I want to play a game like Journey, I'm gonna go play Journey. I'm not gonna go play the fucking discount Cheerios version of Journey. It's a game that I wish I liked more, but I just don't, unfortunately. It's quite, like, it's okay. It's fine. But for all its grandiose spectacle and its over-the-top music, something that's really trying to get you to feel things, it kind of just left me feeling dead inside, if I'm being brutally honest. So next game, let's talk about Blueprints, which is a puzzle roguelike game. Now, I'll be honest, this is one of those games that when I saw it for the first time, I kind of just thought nothing. I kind of just looked at it and went, oh, okay, it's some puzzle roguelike game. All right, whatever. I just looked at it and went, okay. But then I found out they had a demo of it on Steam, and I thought, what the hell? I'll give it a try with the demo and see what's up. And I, to my great surprise, got really, really into the demo. And what Blueprints is, it's this game where you play as this, I think it's a teenager who inherits this mansion, or he inherits the chance to inherit a mansion from his late uncle. So he travels to this mansion, and in his uncle's last will and testament, he tasks the player, with discovering the certain room called, I think it's room 46. And if you can find room 46, the mansion is yours. You've earned it. The catch is that this mansion has to be built by you. And you have these blueprints, which, haha, the clever title, Blueprints? Blueprints, get it? So you have to, you get this roll of the dice randomly generated set of blueprints that you can apply, and it creates different types of rooms. And it's all in this pursuit of creating a room within the limits that the game gives you in order to reach room 46 at the end. And it's a lot more tricky and challenging than it actually sounds. And let me tell you, for the 45 to 50 hours I spent with this game, I must have looked like an insane person. Because this is one of those games like Botany Manor that came out last year, where it actually recommends that you have a notebook with you and you take notes down and you jot things, because this game is brilliant when it comes to environmental design. This is a game that is so excellent at waving key details in front of your face that you never really notice until you have the right context for something. This game is brilliant at that, because when it tells you, take note of every detail, there is a very high possibility that all of the details around you have something to do with a puzzle or something that's going to come up later in the game. And that's why the notebook is handy, where I was scribbling again like a madman, like an insane person through this notebook, and I was drawing diagrams and writing formulas and writing down possibilities of what certain things could mean and things like that. And I just, for those 45 to 50 hours, it was one of the most exhilarating and engrossing puzzle game experiences I have ever had. I absolutely love this game. It just like blew away my expectations for what it was going to be. The moment I fell in love with this game was actually after, because when you finish the main objective, because it's a roguelike that's meant to kind of go on and on and on, that's just the beginning. And there's way more mysteries for you to uncover after that point. So the moment I fell in love with the game was during one of the puzzles you can solve in the second portion of the game after you finish the main objective. And when I realized that the clues for, because I was noticing these weird things in certain rooms, and I kind of just thought to myself, these must mean something. Let me make a note of these down. But I didn't have the context for what it could possibly mean. And then I found out later through a key piece of evidence what it could mean. And it just clicked. It was something like a light bulb went off in my head. And I went, oh my God, that's what this means. And I must have spent 5-10 hours just combing through the different blueprints and the rooms and figuring things out and drawing my own diagram and trying to, because like solving puzzles within puzzles. And it was just, I fell down the rabbit hole big time with this game. And I loved it. I loved my time. I didn't finish every single puzzle. I didn't finish like every single secret that the game has, but this was far and away, I think second only to, I think, well, not second, I think only compared to Fantasy Life I and Expedition 33, this is my favorite game that I've played this year. I love Blueprints. I think it is brilliant when it comes to puzzle design and environmental design, and getting the player to, providing enough of a breadcrumb trail to the player to where they don't feel just completely overwhelmed and lost. And again, if you do play Blueprints, if you end up playing it at some point, I highly, 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 highly recommend having a notebook with you. You will thank me for it. This game is excellent. If you love puzzles, even if you don't love puzzles or roguelikes, I would still recommend giving it a shot if you can. If there's any way for you to just try it, I don't know if the demo is still available publicly on Steam, but if you have access to Steam and the demo is still up there, I highly recommend checking it out just to see if you'll get with what the game is throwing out there. I love it. I think it's great. Next, let's talk about a game that I think is significantly worse than Blueprints, which is Doom: The Dark Ages, which yeah, I don't like this game at all. I feel like I don't know what happened with it. I don't know what the hell is going on with Microsoft gaming in general, but they just, I don't know what the hell's been going on, but like I feel like they have just been releasing, just for me, just like dud after dud after dud after dud throughout this entire generation. Like there will occasionally be the good Microsoft game that I will enjoy, like Psychonauts 2 and Hi-Fi Rush being the obvious ones. Forza Horizon 5 was fun, but man, just they have just dropped one disappointing, either mediocrity or bad game, one right after another. And this, unfortunately, is just yet another one where I don't know what happened here with this game. It feels like they took my complaints with some of the issues I had with Eternal and just cranked these up to 11. And especially the big sin is the story, which it's like they apparently did not hear the feedback from certain people who said, guys, we don't care about these cutscenes in Eternal. It just stops the experience dead in its tracks. It stops the momentum. Let's just get rid of this. Let's just keep the experience more streamlined like it was in Doom 2016. And we'll just go from there. We can get back to that. And id Software basically just went, nah, let's add even more story. Let's put 20 times more story into this game compared to Eternal, and 100 times more story compared to Doom 2016, which is still easily the best Doom game out of this trilogy, in my opinion. I don't know how anyone thinks Doom: The Dark Ages could be like the best one, or I don't understand that at all. I don't know if I've seen that from some people, but I'm sure there are people out there who think this is the best one. I don't get it. I think this game is just, man, the story just sucks. And instead of just being an occasional annoyance like it was in Eternal, it is fucking everywhere, where it's just these bombardment of stupid cutscenes and banal dialogue and blank slate characters that just exist to be mouthpieces for this exposition dialogue, and they just they give just all this unnecessary backstory and attempts at development to the Doomslayer that I don't care. Guys, this is Doom. This is Doom. You just go in there and kill things. Yes, it's meant to be that shallow. That's the spirit of Doom. Doom is just 20. It's like they completely understood the assignment with 2016, and then each game after that, they have just progressively lost more and more of what made Doom 2016 so cool. And instead of a tightly designed experience, it feels like they have just made this game where you can then create the experience that you want to create, almost to like a weirdly condescending degree, where it lets you practically almost be invincible at certain points depending on how you tweak the settings. And it's just this, not even a dynamic difficulty system, it just lets you create your own difficulty, and it doesn't really give much thought to balancing, because it feels like these difficulty settings are just a band-aid to kind of solve the problem with how just brain dead I felt like a lot of the combat in Doom: The Dark Ages was, where just this like parry mechanic is just so easy, but then you have it feels brainless, where you're just spamming the block button, and 9 out of 10 times you're gonna get a perfect parry, because and even if an enemy is behind you and you're not even facing the same way as an enemy coming at you and attacking you from behind, you're gonna get a perfect parry, because it just goes boom, and the Doomslayer just automatically turns and blocks it, and then the developers go, well, you can make the parry windows smaller, and you can tweak. It's like, dude, you're the game designer. Design your game. I am not meant to be your QA tester. I'm not meant to go, well, this system is clearly fucked. I'll go in and make it harder on myself because the developers were too lazy or didn't want to create a much more refined combat system. Doom 2016 Eternal, I felt like they were fine-tuned, like maybe a little too wonky in Eternal, but that's okay. It still felt like, hey, we're hand designing this combat system. We're hand tweaking this. In in Dark Ages, it just feels like, hey, we just threw this default thing in there, and then you can kind of create what you want, go nuts, whatever. It's like, why did they even bother to have game designers on this game when you could just, I don't know, just AI generate out a combat system and then give a bunch of difficulty modifiers and go, here you go nuts. Make your own fine-tuned game. You're the game designer now. It's like, okay. And so that just makes a lot of the combat encounters super repetitive and boring. And I shit you not, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but there were a couple times, especially during the early levels, where I was starting to nod off during certain fights. I swear to God, I was sitting here at my computer playing it, and I was just going like, ugh, like I was just like, I almost fell asleep during some of the combat encounters because they were just so uninteresting and mechanically shallow, and I just went, guys, this is not why I play Doom, to have this parry system. And it's like, if I want to play a Captain America game, I'll go find Avengers or a Lego Avengers or something. I don't play Doom to be Captain America. And the biggest sin that this game commits, in my opinion, that just, even if the combat system was as enjoyable as it is in Doom 2016, something that really just cuts this game in half, in my opinion, as far as just points or estimation, is the music. Which, the music in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are excellent. Mick Gordon did amazing things with the soundtracks for those games. And then, for reasons that just take too long to get into, basically the TLDRs, Bethesda really fucked over Mick Gordon, or id and Bethesda really fucked over Mick Gordon. So he's obviously not back for Dark Ages, and good God, does it show, because this soundtrack sucks. It is, I talked about AI earlier, but this soundtrack to me, if somebody from id said, we AI generated the soundtrack for Doom the Dark Ages, I would 100% believe it. It does not feel like any human creativity or ingenuity went into the sound design. It just is sound music. Blah. It feels like somebody just went in and just said, play an electric guitar and we'll add some sound effects to it, and that'll be the score for the game. And we'll do the occasional metal chant, stuff like that. No catchy melodies, no weird instrumentation choices, nothing memorable, nothing exciting. And when you already have a combat system that's not great, pair that up with a soundtrack that is just criminally dull, it makes for a combat experience that is well below what it should be as far as excitement. And I knew a big part of the reason why I wasn't enjoying this combat was the music, because when I did like an hour where I turned off the music for the game, and I don't do this very often, but I wanted to run a test where I turned off the music for the game and I put in my own music, not my music that I created or anything. I put on music from bands like Pantera and Strapping Young Lad and Lamb of God and stuff like that, my own metal music playlist that I have. And it was like, immediately I noticed a difference in how excited I was with this combat system. Just immediately, even though I knew the combat system was not great, I instantly was having a more enjoyable time because I was listening to metal music that was actually exciting and not boring as shit. So this, whoever the composer or composers are for Doom the Dark Ages, I hope they never return. I hope it never brings whoever this is or whoever these people are who did this soundtrack, because it fucking sucks. Like it's a shit soundtrack, for especially compared to the legacy of really high quality music that Mick Gordon brought to Doom 2016 and Eternal. I mean, maybe I'm biased. Maybe there's some bias in there in the fact that I know that id Software and Bethesda fucked over Mick Gordon, and I want to take it out on the soundtrack to this game. But even I really try. I try to be as objective as I can with my subjectivity, if that makes any sense, with this soundtrack. And I even listened to the soundtrack by itself, and I just was not feeling it whatsoever. I just thought to myself, man, I miss Mick Gordon. He would have done a much better job than whoever the clowns are who did this music. Because I don't know what else they did, but this music just sucks. It sucks pee-pee. So that's Doom the Dark Ages. Not a good game, in my opinion. I just... bad storytelling, boring characters, criminally dull music, lame combat system. Oh, and then they have the gimmick levels, like the mech, which is just bleh, and those terrible dragon levels that just are annoying to control, and they just feel so un-Doom-like, controlling this fucking dragon like it's something out of, you're playing like Panzer Dragoon or something. It's like, okay, it's not why I play Doom. But Doom 2016 Supremacy, baby. That is by far the best Doom game that has come out of the recent stuff. By far. And I don't think that will ever be topped if id Software continues to make Doom games. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on at id Software as far as creativity over there, but they need to sort that shit out. So the next game I'd like to talk about, or the next few, I don't really have a whole lot to say about them, so I'll make them quick. The next game I'd like to talk about is this game called Spilled, which is this really cute pixel art game that involves you controlling this boat in order to clean up oil spills within these various environments. And it was made by one woman who lives on a houseboat, which I thought, I mean, there was a period where I was looking for some Kickstarter games that had good reputations that I could kind of chuck some money towards and buy and see for myself. And this is one of the ones that popped up for me, where I looked at it and I liked the story of this woman who worked on the game while living on a houseboat, because it was a dream of hers to own her own houseboat, and she did it, and she wanted to make this game that's very environmentally conscious and stuff like that. And the game was $5. It's less than an hour, even if you're going for 100%, but I think the game's art is stunning. For I think it's main developer, it's her. She might have had some help with various other aspects of the game, but art in this game, gorgeous, beautiful pixel art. So for $5, less than an hour, I still would recommend this game. It's just a fun time. You just kind of sit there and you're just cleaning oil spills. And the enjoyment of this game is when you finally clean up all the oil spills and you get to see the environment be returned to its pristine natural beauty. And that's something that was consistently enjoyable in Spilled. So I recommend that. I thought that was a fun time. I also recommend the game Logic Bombs if you're into logic puzzle games. This is the debut game from the legendary, now retired YouTuber Matthew Matosis, because he retired from making YouTube videos a number of years ago in order to pursue game development. And this is his game that he's been working on for a long time. And I'm a big fan of Matthew Matosis, so I wanted to help contribute to the game to buy it. And I don't have the skill to really get into the nitty-gritty of analyzing what makes a puzzle game like this kind of tick. But to me, it just clicked. I feel like this is a game, I'll put it like this. If you're a fan of games like Sudoku, I feel like you would like Logic Bombs, because it has a very similar puzzle design philosophy. Next game I'd like to talk about is this game called The Darkest Files. Now, this one, it's a game that is based on real historical events where a real, I believe it was a district attorney during the 1950s or the 1960s in Germany, post-Nazi era, where they wanted to get a legal team together in order to pursue people who committed atrocities during the Nazi regime, who got away with it or managed to maybe slink into obscurity or were never really prosecuted for their crimes. And you play as a woman who joins this legal team who takes on various cases involving Nazi atrocities. And something I really, really liked about this game, and it's obvious why if you know me as a person, because I am fascinated by this kind of history, especially like the Holocaust and Nazi Germany and stuff like that. I'm fascinated by this history. I think the thing that I really liked about this game, my number one big positive that I have about it, is how intimidating it feels. Where they do a great job for all the flaws I have with some of its gameplay design and its voice acting and stuff like that. The thing that I really love about this game is that it takes its subject matter 100% seriously. And it made me feel intimidated to take on some of these cases because internally I understood the enormous weight and responsibility that was I felt like it was being entrusted to me to bring these people to justice. They don't shy away at all from talking about the atrocities that happen, and not just in the concentration camps, but things like ratting on neighbors to the Gestapo and murdering people like children and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't shy away from talking about the things that happened. And then you also have the fact that the character you're playing as is Jewish, so of course there's a lot of, she gets called like a rat. I think they throw a brick at her office at one point in the game. They spray a swastika on it, and they say things like go to hell, rat, you should have died in the gas chambers, or just horrible things like that. So it does a great job of immersing you in the atmosphere of the kind of setting that it's trying to portray. The big problem that I have with this game, though, is that I feel like the number of chances that you get for the investigation side and then the courtroom side of the gameplay are out of whack. Because I feel like I compare it to a game like, it's thematically, it's not the most appropriate comparison, but gameplay wise, I think of something like Ace Attorney, where Ace Attorney, it feels like there's this good balance between the investigation and the courtroom stuff, where if you screw up, you don't have to repeat entire sections to get to something that you may have wanted to do. But in Darkest File, what was frustrating about it was that it kind of is very penalizing if you don't get something immediately correct during the investigation section. Where, I'll give you an example. There was one moment where I was going through the files in order to press a witness on a contradiction that I had seen. And I looked at the various files and I found something, and they make you click on very specific things if you're playing on a higher difficulty. And I looked through the case files and I thought, okay, this seems to be the thing that's going to be good. And I clicked it and it was wrong. And I looked at it and I went, no, that's not right. I could have argued, if I was in that position, I could have argued that this line in this specific thing that I found was relevant to contradicting what this witness had said. But the game goes, no, you fucked up, moving on. And you miss out on a very key piece of information. It's almost as if, like, again, in Phoenix Wright, as if you accidentally ask a witness the wrong question, it just immediately keeps going. And it makes you miss out, and it, like, forces you to lose the case. Which can get very frustrating in Darkest Files. Especially when I thought I was in the right, and I felt like I could have argued that this was better. Now, this would be less of a problem if the entire, even the courtroom sections were this strict, but they're not. And it's almost comical how many chances you get in the courtroom to make your case compared to investigating people when you're doing the grunt work of coming up with evidence and contradictions and witnesses and stuff like that. Because in the courtroom, if you fuck up presenting a compelling case to the judge, the worst you get is just an annoyed look from the judge. And they go, hey, prosecutor, this isn't really compelling. Can you try that again? Why am I given so many chances in the courtroom to fail? But when it comes to the investigation, it's like so strict. And if you fuck up, you gotta go all the way back to the beginning of that sequence, go through all the investigations again, go through all the evidence again, to then get to that one point, that one question that would unlock crucial evidence, and then hope again you get it right. And if you fuck up, nope, you gotta go all the way back to the beginning, and it's like, fuck, that is so annoying. Like, I liked again, it's just very out of whack how difficult the investigation portion is compared to the courtroom portion. Because if you fuck up on the investigation, you can miss out on some key stuff for the courtroom, and you don't get a good ending for some of this. You could potentially let some of these criminals walk away scot-free, which sucks. But again, if it was more even-handed on both sides, I'd have less of a problem with it, but it's inconsistent, which that's my biggest annoyance with The Darkest Files. And the fact that the voice acting is just not very good in certain key roles, which is disappointing. And it kind of takes you out of the experience a little bit. It kind of reminds you, oh, this is a more lower budget Kickstarter game, when you hear some of the voice acting that they have. Which, if there's anywhere I wish they had splurged a little more money on, it would be getting some more high quality voice actors in there. I mean, the voice acting isn't terrible, but it's not good in certain roles. So that's The Darkest Files. One of the more unique games to come out this year, but flawed, but unique. I'll give it that much. All right, next game is one of the biggest surprises, maybe the biggest surprise of the year for me, which is the Rogue Prince of Persia. Now, this is published by Ubisoft, of course, but not internally developed. This is one of the rare Ubisoft games these days that they publish from a third-party dev. And the developer in this case is Evil Empire, who were the team that developed a lot of the DLC content for Dead Cells, another 2D side-scroller roguelike game. Similar to Dead Cells, Rogue Prince of Persia, if that wasn't obvious from its title, is also a roguelike 2D side-scroller game based in the Prince of Persia franchise. This game has had a little bit of a strange road to release. It was released in early access. The story was that it was meant to release, I think, in April or May or around some time. I believe I don't remember if it was released in early access this year or late last year, but it was supposed to come out. And then all of a sudden, Supergiant surprise launched the early access version of Hades 2, which is probably the most highly anticipated roguelike out there right now. And so that forced Evil Empire to push back the release of Rogue Prince of Persia by, I think, about a couple weeks or a month. So they released, didn't really light the world on fire, but they went in and added new content and tweaked it, and then they released the 1.0 a few weeks ago at the time of recording this. And what I didn't know was that they were going to bring it to PlayStation Plus. I initially was never going to bother with this game because, one, because it's Ubisoft. I liked The Lost Crown. I didn't love it. I liked The Lost Crown, so I kind of went, okay, I feel like I've gotten my fill of 2D side-scroller Prince of Persia by this point. Then I found out, like I said, it was available on PS Plus, and I went, okay, what the hell? I'll give it a shot. And I have had a surprisingly fun time with it. And I think I'm starting to get more and more on board with roguelikes, because I have never been a fan of the genre. I'm not really keen on the idea of RNG and randomly generated levels and doing runs and things like that, getting to the end of a string of bosses and failing and having to start all over again. I'm not the biggest fan of that concept, but there have been certain roguelikes that I've played over the last few years. It's more during this generation that I have really started to come around to roguelikes being more something I can really get down with. Because I think of games like the previously talked about Blueprints, that's a roguelike that I love. Returnal, which is probably the most expensive, high-profile roguelike ever made, possibly. That's a game, I have problems with it, but I find its structure combined with its storytelling to be so captivating that I still think about it to this day, despite the flaws that are in that game. Hades from Supergiant is an obvious game that I think is really, really good. There have been other roguelikes I played over the last few years that I've enjoyed. Oh, Balatro is a big one. That's a game that I adore. Balatro is one of my favorite games this generation. That's a deck building roguelike, which again is something on paper, it's like so antithetical to my tastes as a gamer, but I love that game. I think it's fucking incredible. It's addictive as shit. So while Rogue Prince of Persia is not, I don't think it's great, it's not one of the best roguelikes I've ever played, it is surprisingly good for what I thought it was going to be. And I think a lot of it comes down to just how snappy the game is, because it's not a game that feels like it's filled with a lot of fluff or pomp or anything like that. It's just very, here's your weapons, here are the enemies, here are the different levels you can go to, have at it. And for the short story campaign that it has, and of course you can do more after the story is finished, you can complete contracts and you can fill out the various boss challenges and stuff like that. But I feel like the way it opens up as far as the different levels you can then get access to based on the side missions or main story missions that you can find throughout the levels and stuff like that. The thing is though, is that while the weapons that you could start out with and the various design of the levels might change here and there, it's a lot more straightforward and linear feeling than I was anticipating. Because I think what works to its favor is the fact that it is Prince of Persia, so time manipulation is a very obvious core of that franchise. So I feel like roguelike actually works in the context of Prince of Persia, and they do a very good job of explaining why this is a roguelike within the story. And they do something that Hades has influenced other roguelikes with, is having the roguelike element be a key part of the story and navigating the challenges of player burnout that might be something that's a risk with roguelikes. Because there might come a point of apathy for certain players that play that then go, well, I'm just going to keep doing the same things over and over and over again, so why shouldn't I care? Why should I give a shit? Starting with Hades, certain developers have found ways to take that potential burnout and circumvent around it by creating a compelling narrative within a roguelike structure and having that repeating element make a lot of sense within the context of what's going on. And then of course they add little narrative bits that are rewards, little narrative breadcrumbs and different dialogue. Prince of Persia doesn't have any voice acting, so you just have to read all the dialogue that's in it, and it's nowhere near as extensive with the various dialogue that can come up compared to Hades, which sometimes felt like it was a never-ending well of different voice dialogue and lines that would pop up with certain characters. That dialogue system they have in that game is amazing. It really is a high standard for this genre. I really enjoy it. I think the combat's a lot of fun. It's very flat. It's very fast. It feels very tight and responsive. I like most of the bosses in the game. They aren't comically difficult like some other roguelikes are because they want you to keep going. They're actually a pretty decent challenge without being overwhelmingly hard to the point of being brutal or unfair. I surprisingly liked the story, which is not something I often say with a roguelike. I quite liked it. I think it's $30. I would actually recommend it if you are into roguelites. I would recommend it. I thought it was a fun game. It's so funny because I guess this rule of mine that I have, or this pattern of mine, that I tend to like a Ubisoft game once every 5 years, where it feels like every 4 to 5 years. There was Watch Dogs 2, and I really enjoyed, and then there was Immortals Phoenix Rising that I really enjoyed, and then there was Rogue Prince of Persia that came out last year that I really enjoyed. Or sorry, there was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown that came out last year that I enjoyed. And then this year, there's Rogue Prince of Persia, which I like. And I guess it still fits within the rule because it's not a Ubisoft developed game. It's just the one that they're publishing. So that's an exception, that a Ubisoft published game that I enjoy, which is a rare thing these days. So hats off to Evil Empire. They made probably the most surprising game of the year for me. I've put way more hours into Rogue Prince of Persia than I expected, because I downloaded and tried playing it with the intent of, well, I'm probably going to spend about maybe 30 minutes to an hour on this and then kind of have my fill of it and call it a day and delete it. But nope, still on my PS5. I've still played it as recently as a few days ago. I went back in and did another run of it just because I think it's fun. I just think it's very enjoyable. So I recommend it if you're a fan of roguelikes and you want to support something that's related to Prince of Persia. So another game that I don't really have a whole lot to say about is this game called Wordplay, which is from Game Maker's Toolkit, which is another YouTube channel I quite like. So this is the guy who runs that channel, his second game, I believe. I think his first game was this magnet puzzle game. I think it's called Mind Over Magnet, which I've never played, but that didn't really look like something that would interest me. But again, here we are with a roguelike. A roguelike Scrabble game is something that I can get behind, because it's just something that I can play while in the background while I'm talking to friends or listening to something on my PC or something like that. So it's basically Scrabble but roguelike. So if that sounds fun to you, you're getting exactly what you're paying for. So yeah, it's a fun game. I like it. I think it's fun. So I don't have a whole lot to say about that. So moving on to the next game, which is Mario Kart World. Where do I start with this one? I think I would be a little bit more positive about the game. Not a whole lot, but a little bit more positive if it wasn't $80. If it was something more like 40 or hell, even 50, because it is very polished and it does look very nice, I would still find it lacking compared to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but I would still be confident in recommending it for $50, $40 or $50. But this thing being 80 is just, there's no other word for it. It's just insulting. It really is Nintendo. It's Nintendo pushing the limits of what they can charge their fans to the absolute extreme with something like this, where ironically, if Donkey Kong Bonanza had been priced at $80, I would have been more okay with that. I still would have been kind of thinking, that's a little much maybe for something like this, but at least it's very good. The problem with Mario Kart World for me is that I think it's just a very mediocre game compared to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Even with all the new additions and the fact that there's now a free roam world and stuff like that, there's just something that I don't particularly find anywhere near as compelling as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And I don't know if it's the design of the areas or the fact that I find the open world stuff to just be very, very, very basic and unimpressive. I think the best thing that this game has going for it is that Battle Royale mode. That to me is by far the most fun part of Mario Kart World. Everything else about it though, I have lots of problems with. I think there are just too many racers at one particular time. I don't like that there's no classic 3-lap structure where you have to, it's almost like driving to the level, the next track itself, and then doing only 1 or 2 laps on it. It's a really weird design choice, and there's no way to change that as of right now. I think the rubber banding AI in this game is worse than ever. I think if you're playing anything, the fact that this doesn't even have something like 250cc is 250cc race is crazy to me. I don't know how it is now, just because I haven't played it beyond the original release week that it came out. I think I tried it for that period of time and just kind of went and fell off of it. I tried playing it with the open world stuff with Richard and others, and we just kind of spent maybe a few minutes in it, and we realized just how shallow it was, and we just went, oh yeah, this is nowhere near as cool as we thought it was gonna be. So we kind of dipped out of that. So it's just overall a very, for something that's again just $80. I mean, God, like I've paid way more for better games. Honestly, I spent over $100 on Persona 5 twice. I spent $150 on The Witcher 3 with the collector's edition. I was very satisfied with my purchases with those. Then they want to charge Mario Kart World for $80. And I go, what the fuck? And this is just Nintendo going, it's so arrogant. Them just going, yeah, bitch, we know you'll pay for it because we're Nintendo. Fuck you. Something like that. I don't really... I just really don't have much desire to go back to Mario Kart World until they really add some fundamental changes, and I don't know if Nintendo is going to do that with this. They might. I'm pretty sure this is already a big success for Nintendo. I'm sure they've already made their monies back with this game more than twice because it's Mario Kart World and it's the big launch game for the Switch 2, a new Nintendo console, so it's obviously going to be a big thing. So I personally though just found Mario Kart World outside of that Battle Royale mode to just be a very, very, very underwhelming experience, which is really disappointing because I love Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I'd rather just go back and play that. I think that game is just much more fun and well balanced, and even though I think objectively it has probably about the same amount of content, maybe as Mario Kart World, possibly if we're just looking at realistically what's there, maybe a tiny bit more in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but off the top of my head. But it just, something just feels off about Mario Kart World, and I don't quite know how to put my finger on it other than just saying it just feels underbaked, which that's really the best that I can say about Mario Kart World. It's just for something that I feel like should have been an obvious home run for Nintendo, and I am stunned by the high review scores that it got. I know that Nintendo games tend to get kind of a bigger pass than usual from a lot of mainstream game critics, but the fact that some people are throwing out 9s and 10s for this, I think is ridiculous. I think it's like, dude, you could not have Nintendo's balls in your mouth more, even if you tried. Like it's just, come on, like get Nintendo's balls out of your mouth and just like let's put our big boy review pants on and let's review this for what it actually is, okay? Rather than just, wow, Mario Kart, and they slap like another 3 points onto it or three letter grades onto it. It's absurd how high the reviews are for this game for something that just feels very underbaked. Next game is something very different. Wanderstop. So this is the latest game from one of my favorite game developers, Davey Reardon, who is the developer behind one of my all-time favorite games, Stanley Parable. He also did the Beginner's Guide, which is a much more, if you can believe it, strange and experimental and difficult to pin down game compared to the Stanley Parable. But it's a game that I think about a lot because it has a very thought-provoking, unique thematic core that I won't get into here just because it's difficult for me to explain without the knowledge of having played the Beginner's Guide. It's a game I haven't played in like 10 years. I've only played it once, but I've never forgotten about it, which is an extraordinary achievement within itself, given how many games I've played in the 10 years since I played the Beginner's Guide. I think about it quite often. This is the latest game, and it's a game that is all about breaking away from routine. breaking away from trying to improve and trying to set goals and live within a structured existence or something like that, where Davey Reardon, again, he is putting autobiographical elements into the game. And it's a game that's all about running a tea shop. It's all about this warrior who loses the ability to fight because she has pushed herself to her absolute extreme. She's tried to find this master who lives in this forest who will try to train her back to her fighting peak. And because that's all she thinks there is to life, just fighting and being the best. And she tries finding this warrior in this forest, and she ends up passing out, and she's taken to this tea shop run by this guy. I forget the character's name, but it's this tea shop owner who then tells her, you know, I found you passed out in the forest. You're obviously not well. You're obviously, you know, much less than what you normally are like, physically, so to speak, mentally. So why don't you come work at my tea shop? And you can kind of just sit around and do whatever and help run the tea shop and learn and stuff like that. And this is one of those games that I would describe as pleasant rather than something I really, really enjoyed. This is a strange contradiction because I guess I did get into the headspace of the character where I grew kind of annoyed by the lack of a routine and the lack of structure. Even though the game kind of has, it does have a structure if you go through the main story stuff and you complete the main orders that the game has. But I feel like the game's themes, as far as taking it easy, are sort of at odds with the structure of the game, so to speak, because it's difficult to describe my feelings on this game, because while I understand the message that the game is trying to put across, where it's trying to talk about the downsides of living within a rigid structure and not trying to take time out of your day to care for yourself, I understand the point that the game is trying to get across, but I just don't find it all that compelling as a gameplay experience. I guess that's ultimately the point that I'm trying to get across. Because again, it's very similar to a lot of Davey Reardon's other games where it's difficult to talk about and describe. And I would say this is his most, if we're talking indie game development, this is his most high profile mainstream in quotes effort yet, even though it is idiosyncratic like a lot of the other things that he's done. It has more of a traditional story to it. Its themes are more on the nose compared to something like the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide, but it's still pleasant. I really like the color palette that this game has. I like that it frequently changes color palettes depending on where you are in the story, and the story's environments tend to reflect the headspace of the main character at the time in the story, which I like. I think the ability, the way it makes you make tea, while simple, is enjoyable and satisfying. I like the design, the visual design of the tea shop that you work in. I think it looks really nice and pretty, but I just think compared to his other games, this one, I feel like as far as expressing its themes, is a little too on the nose. And there's this kind of weird, again, I don't really know how to describe it. There's a strange contradiction between what the game is telling you and the story structure of it versus the gameplay structure. So that's something that I'm still trying to really, even though I've had, God, when did this come out? Back in March? I've sat on it for that long, and I still really don't fully understand my feelings on this game to like 100%. But I know I like the game. I think it's enjoyable. It just, compared to Davey Reardon's other things, it's nowhere near as insightful as I expected. It's kind of, I think it's unfortunately in this wave of games that thinks it's a lot more insightful than it actually is, where it kind of tries to be about this positivity and mental health. And on the surface, I'm not against that, but I've noticed that certain games kind of tend to lean more towards this. I would say they think they're being empathetic and helpful, but it more comes across as condescending and this therapy speak that I'm not a big fan of in video games. Very few video games these days I feel like tackle mental health in a full, multi-layered, textured, complicated, insightful, subtle way. I think Expedition 33 is one of the few that does it really well. That game goes to some dark places, and there are some dark moments in Wanderstop, but it never really takes it anywhere near as, not that I'm asking it to, but I guess the positive vibes kind of thing that it's trying to go for, the chill and just relax, just take care of yourself kind of thing. Comes across more as condescending than helpful. So I think that's one of my main issues with Wanderstop that prevents me from really embracing it and thinking about it more, like I have with the Stanley Parable over the years and the Beginner's Guide. And I hope whatever Davey Reardon decides to do next, he kind of more goes back to that and less like Wanderstop, because Wanderstop is an interesting experiment for him, but I don't think that kind of gameplay structure really suits his idiosyncrasies. So the penultimate game that I want to talk about is the latest game in the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series, which is Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which is one of the most unexpected sequels or types of games they could make, where they basically went, we're tired of waiting for Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake or another game like it in the series, or hell, another pirate game. So we're just gonna make our own pirate game. We're gonna slap a pirate hat onto Majima and give him a pirate ship and a crew, and there you go. And it speaks to Yakuza's adaptability as a franchise, that they've reached a point where they could literally do anything, and I probably would just go, fuck it, like, okay, I'm in. And pirate game is definitely not one of the things that I was expecting them to do, but I was all for it. And, you know, I think my biggest disappointment with this game is that while I do enjoy it and I like it, I don't think it takes the pirate stuff as extreme as I thought, because a lot of it is just very, like, sure, it has the open world ship elements, but a lot of it just feels very shallow and repetitive. You can tell, you can definitely tell that similar to The Man Who Erased His Name, Gaiden, you can tell this was originally meant to be DLC for its respective big mainline Yakuza game. Like Gaiden was meant to be DLC for 7, and then this was obviously meant to be DLC for Infinite Wealth. But then they went, you know, there's enough here to where we could probably add more and just give it its own standalone release. And it has less of that DLC stink padding on it compared to Gaiden, which I felt like had way too much padding in its story before it got to the good stuff near the end. This game, it's a little more consistently doled out with the padding, where it doesn't feel anywhere near as sluggish sometimes like Gaiden did. But you can tell that there are points where you look at it and you go, oh, you really just copy and pasted a lot of the stuff to just increase the quantity of time that I'm going to be spending with this game. And not that that's a bad thing in the case of Yakuza. Yakuza to me is like the ultimate asset flip series, where they have really, and normally that's meant as a derogatory comment. I mean that as a compliment, where they have found very smart ways to just reuse assets throughout the series in order to get these games out quickly and cheaply. And it's not like they're bad games. They're enjoyable, fun games. And Pirate Yakuza has a lot of really fun, enjoyable moments. And it's silly. It made me laugh. It has a surprisingly good story. It's heartwarming at times. And there's this unexpected, really sweet dynamic between Majima and the main kid character, Noah, which in a million years, I never would expect Goro Majima, the mad dog, to have a charming, cute friendship with a young child. But here we are. It's honestly one of the best aspects of this game is watching the relationship between Majima and this young boy who's looking for, I mean, he has a dad, but he's looking for like a friend and adventure on the high seas. And people are gonna, every time I bring up a Kingdom Hearts comparison, I imagine people like roll their eyes and go like, oh, here we go again. But the way Noah's arc is, it's kind of a mirror to how Sora is in KH1, where he's trapped on this island and he's just like, fuck, I just want to get out there and just go on some adventures. And then he's given this opportunity to get out there. And unlike Sora, where he's kind of forced, he's pushed out there, not kind of, he is, because Destiny Islands get fucking destroyed by the Heartless. Noah wants this adventure. He wants to leave this island to go with Majima and get on the ship and go out and sing pirate songs. Like, there are full-on musical numbers in this game beyond the karaoke, which comes a little bit out of nowhere, but it came at the right moments, where when Noah first leaves the island and he's so overjoyed that he gets it out in a song, which is a cool moment. It's very sweet. One of the big issues with this game, though, speaking of getting going, it takes a long time before it finally gets you to the pirate stuff, where it finally just lets you off a leash and goes, here's the pirate stuff that you came here for. Have at it. It is very slow to get going at the beginning. Even by Yakuza standards, it is terminally slow to get going. And while there is fun story stuff in the beginning, it has the same problem that Infinite Wealth did, where it just feels like the opening to get to the good stuff is like way too long by like multiple hours. It's like, guys, you gotta get the pacing better in the beginning of your stories. Where Infinite, I feel like didn't take as long. I don't think it took as long as Infinite just because it's a shorter game. Infinite took like 10-15 hours before it finally let you off the leash to get to the core of the gameplay after all the tutorials and all the different things that it introduces. This game, it takes about 4 or 5 hours, maybe a little bit longer, to really get going. And that's with you mainlining the story. That's like if you're not doing what I did, where I tend to just go at it at my own pace. But even by that approach to the game, it takes a long time to get going. And this game, unfortunately, also has a very similar problem with its side stories that Infinite Wealth had, where Infinite Wealth has the benefit of having like Sujimon and the Dondoko Island there to be the counterweight to the more lackluster side stories that it has. In this game, really all you have are the ship battles, the open sea stuff, which is kind of repetitive, and then you have the side stories, which are kind of just as forgettable compared to how they were in Infinite Wealth, unfortunately. There's maybe only one I can remember that was fine. It was okay. And then the rest of them just kind of blend together in my head. That's Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. It's, I really like the pirate fighting style that you have. I like that you can get instruments. That's another problem with this game too, is that if you are going for the powers, the big like arena wiping powers that you can get, it like breaks the finale to this game. Because other than the big, obviously like Amon challenge that comes later on, if you get the main weapons that this game's open world has you find, you can break the game in the final, the finale. Because it was so comically easy, the final few bosses, using the weapons that I had gotten from the open world, the powers. I just like the cutscene building up to the final boss is just big, you know, typical Yakuza flair. But then you get to the actual combat, and it's just wiped the fucking floor with the guy in a matter of like a minute. And I went, oh, well, that was underwhelming. But there's no real restriction on you getting these powers later on, so it's not really balanced around you whether or not you get these. It assumes that you're not gonna go for the open world stuff before you finish up the main story in a weird way. So yeah, it's just strange. It's just strange how they balance the open world stuff compared to the story stuff. So that's Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. You know exactly what you're getting. You're getting Majima wearing a pirate hat, riding around on a pirate ship and being goofy. It's exactly what it is, which is not a bad thing at all. And now the final game is the one that I saved this one for last, because this is going to be the one that kicked off this idea of doing this video. Is, of course, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, which is the latest game, obviously, from Kojima Productions and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Death Stranding 2. A lot of things I can say about Death Stranding 2, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I can say about the first one. I think both games are weird as shit. They are both gorgeous. They both have really incredible facial tech. Normally, like, a lot of facial tech, especially when it's real actors, tend to go into this uncanny valley territory. But Death Stranding and 1 and 2 are the rare exceptions where they don't look creepy. Even after 6 years, I still think the facial animation, it's obviously is worse compared to Death Stranding 2, but it looks great still in Death Stranding 1. Both of them, I really like the unique vibes that both of these games have, where they are very much focused on this frontier man mapping out the territory as you go, like exploring uncharted territory and meeting up with isolated people kind of thing. That to me is the heart and soul of Death Stranding. It's this very mountain man frontier, mountain man exploring the frontier kind of thing that I really like. There's this real romanticism of bringing people together through delivering items, building community. There's this, I was trying to explain it to a buddy of mine who's a truck driver. I was trying to explain it to him, and I probably ended up sounding like a moron, but I told him, you know truck driving, right? You know how there's like tedious elements and stuff like that? So imagine Death Stranding 1 and 2 as kind of like the romanticism of a truck driver without the really, really annoying, tedious parts. And even then, the annoying, tedious parts in 1 and 2 related to the delivery system are part of the experience. And they're meant to kind of give you more of a balance where it's I think the term, the suffering makes it fun, sort of, is how it applies. And again, I probably sound like insane describing it like this. Like, what is this guy talking about? Suffering and romanticism of truck driving and all that? Like, what the hell is he talking about? Which I get, because if you there's people that even have played Death Stranding that probably hear what I'm saying and go like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? The romanticism of delivering packages and truck driving. It's like nonsense, which I get. And that's why I appreciate Death Stranding, both 1 and 2. I appreciate them for their the unique gameplay that they bring to the table. This time, though, with Death Stranding 2, it adds a lot more of a traditional combat and stealth system, where in Death Stranding 1, it really, outside of the boss fights, it really encouraged you to not fight anyone, to be as non-lethal and non-combative as you possibly could. And there were reasons why you could not kill people in that world. And there still are reasons why you can't kill people in this world. This time around, Kojima looked at probably the #1 criticism of Death Stranding and said, look, what you've made is really weird, but we need something that's more of a traditional combat system or a traditional stealth system. And Kojima said, I got you, fam. And Death Stranding 1, I would describe as, I don't know how I would describe it. It's something I've really never played before. And then Death Stranding 2 is more like, what if we combined Metal Gear Solid 4 and Metal Gear Solid 5 with Death Stranding? And that's Death Stranding 2, where there's still Death Stranding isms in there. There's still its idiosyncrasies and quirks and stuff like that. But the meat and potatoes combat and stealth of the game is much more in line with the traditional Metal Gear Solid flow and the feel than it is with the original Death Stranding. And that's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because when you get into those situations, and there's a lot more forced combat in Death Stranding 2 in certain cases with the main story, where it does feel really good to play. It is a fun, the shooting feels really good. The stealth feels much better. You have a lot of options as far as the type of things you can do to enemies to distract them and take them on head on and stuff like that. A lot of options, and they're really, really fun. The bad thing is that you lose some of the spirit that made the original Death Stranding unique. And that, to me, is the biggest problem with Death Stranding 2. Almost in an effort to try to make it better, in quotes, trying to be smoother, trying to be more mainstream, I guess, they've, in a way, made it worse. Or at least not as unique as the original Death Stranding, where it loses a lot of the vibe that the Mountain Man Frontier vibe that the original Death Stranding had. Where the original Death Stranding, I felt like, had a greater emphasis on struggle, where it was not easy to navigate the environment with vehicles or things like that. It wasn't until later in the game when you can unlock zip lines, and that kind of breaks the game if you know what you're doing with it. But for the most part, Death Stranding is all about on-foot travel and cargo management and navigating the hazards and Mother Nature and stuff like that. It was this very calming, relaxing experience. Death Stranding 2 is kind of like that, but it gives you the option and it makes it much easier to access things like vehicles like motorbikes, and especially the truck. Like, once you get the truck in this game, there's really no other reason. It really does not give you a reason to walk around anymore, especially when you start building roads and building monorails, which are great for heavy packages. When it comes to quantity, the amount of quantity that you have to carry around, those monorails and those roads are a godsend. And that, to me, was the most enjoyable aspect of Death Stranding 2, besides the crazy story stuff that happens in the finale. Those hours that I spent building the roads and hiking around with materials and navigating the environment to bring the materials to the various road builders and monorail builders and stuff like that, that was the most fun that I had with Death Stranding 2 on a gameplay level. Once that stopped, and I had everything, and I was just able to drive around like willy-nilly, that's when the game took a sharp turn downward as far as my overall enjoyment of it. It just did not have that magic, that feel, that soul that the original Death Stranding had. And I don't think I'm in the minority, because I've seen this complaint from a number of other people who felt like they bounce off of Death Stranding 2 pretty hard because of just how much more streamlined and easy the experience of delivering packages was in this game. And again, it sounds so strange to say that in an effort to make the game better and more easier and streamlined, they made it worse. Because that suffering was part of the original Death Stranding experience. That's part of what made that game unique. It was the long treks across enemy-ridden territory. It was the time that you fucked up on the weight and fell down a mountain, or your packages strewn about. It's those moments of failure, it's those moments of struggle and suffering that gave the original Death Stranding its flavor. It gave that gameplay its flavor. And that flavor has just really been diluted in Death Stranding 2. I still really like Death Stranding 2, by the way. I'm not knocking the game. I'm not saying it's bad. I really like it. I think this game is fun as hell. Even the combat, which I think, like the emphasis on combat, which I think robs it of the Death Stranding soul, the spirit, is very enjoyable. It's fun. I think the story is, like I said, batshit insane. I mean, this game's finale is basically Metal Gear Solid 4 meets End of Evangelion. Like that's how insane this gets. And it has those tried and true weirdo Hideo Kojima moments that made me just laugh out loud and kind of just put my hand on my forehead like, oh my god, this is insane. This is nuts. This is funny. It's weird. It's that typical charming Kojima thing that he brings to it. This game is, as far as I'm concerned, a technical marvel. The Decima engine, I think, should be utilized across PlayStation Studios. I mean, I know various studios, they have their own in-house engines, which are great, like what Naughty Dog uses, and Sony Santa Monica's engine's great. Sucker Punch's in-house engine is great. But this Decima engine is, man, it is something. It looks, during a time where unfortunately a lot of games just can't really seem to optimize something like Unreal Engine 5 properly a lot of the time. You have an engine like Decima that looks just, I would say in certain shots, as far as graphical fidelity, looks lifelike. It looks photorealistic, but then it runs at a fucking borderline flawless 60 frames, even on base PS5, and it's stunning lighting and environmental design and facial animation. This thing is fucking incredible, combined with the art direction. It's a stunning work of art visually. It is a benchmark that other studios should, maybe not all studios, not all games should be like this, but if you're going for realistic tech, realistic looking environments, holy shit, this is a benchmark. This thing is immaculate the way it's presented. And there was a couple shots in the beginning of the game that I literally looked at them and I thought to myself, did they just go out into the desert in real, did Hideo Kojima just go out into the desert in real life and film this and just added in live action footage into the opening of this game? Because it looked photorealistic. But I even now, like, even though my brain, like, I know objectively that what I'm looking at is game footage on the Decima engine, there's a part of my brain that just continually, like, does a double take and goes, that can't be game engine. That looks way too realistic. That just looks way too smooth. The lighting is just too much. Looks amazing. I think Death Stranding 2, I mean, this is one game that I spent the extra $10 to get the 48-hour early access, the $80 edition. I actually, good friend of mine bought this for me as a late birthday present, so I didn't end up spending the $80, but this is a game that I easily can recommend for $80. It definitely looks the part. It's extremely polished. It's fun. It's weird. I mean, even with the modern conveniences that Death Stranding 2 has, compared to a lot of other AAA games out there, it is still weird as fuck. It is niche and idiosyncratic and fucking weird as shit. So just for that, I and it's a very good game. It's a very fun game. I highly recommend it. It's even with my issues with Death Stranding 2, it's definitely one of the better games I've played this year. I had a lot of fun with it. So there you go. Those are the 2025 games that I never got around to making videos about, or I just chose not to just because I didn't really have a whole lot to say that could fill a whole length of time. So anywho, I hope you all enjoyed this solo podcast. I might do another one of these next year, so let me know if you like this format. So maybe you used it in the background doing something else, which is perfectly fine. So anywho, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all next time. See ya!